Meanwhile, what do we see coming from the political leaders in England? We have London Mayor Khan, who's been telling us the big deal is climate change. That's the real threat. That's going to burn down the world. Perhaps, as I pointed out, I did a short little report on this while I was there. Bilderberg says terrorist van carbon footprint is more dangerous than a bigger threat than the people running people down with this van or jumping out with knives. And of course, the mayor of London is one of those people. And we have Theresa May, who is telling us that the real problem is the internet. The internet is a breeding ground for terrorism. It is not the religion of peace. It is not Islam. It is not the false prophet Muhammad, the wolf in sheep's clothing. No, it is not that. It is not our open borders. It's not the fact that we let these people in and that our countries become a breeding ground for terrorism, just as these foreign countries have become. No, it isn't that. It's the internet. It's your free speech. That's the problem. That has to be attacked. And I think it's interesting that MIT Technology Review today came out and directly attacked Theresa May, saying she wants to end safe spaces for terrorists on the internet. What does that even mean? How could you even do that? They point out how absurd that is technologically. She said the internet, the big companies, are providing safe spaces for extremism. And they said, this is a country that already grants its government some of the most sweeping digital surveillance powers of any democracy. And of course, MIT doesn't point it out, but they have draconian free speech laws. If you're not politically correct, they will come after you very hard. So will MIT, as a matter of fact. But then they point out the technological issues before us. They say, even if all the necessary state-mandated technical steps were taken by the purveyors of commercial software and devices like Google or Apple, say, anyone who wanted to could easily skirt their restrictions by running open source versions of the software or unlocking phones. And then here's the obvious thing that they point out. They talk about a street preacher, a British lawyer, who has been a hate preacher, a jihadist polemicist, Anjem Choudary, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, but they point out that he was a real-life radical preacher who recruited people face to face. He was much more important for jihad in Britain than Twitter or Facebook. How is he recruiting people face to face? It's because they have open borders, because they do not want to jail or deport people who are preaching hate face to face. That is the breeding ground for terrorism, not our freedoms. And of course, it's another reminder as we look at the consequences of this, and we understand that 90% of the police in the UK are unarmed. Only people that are like their SWAT teams are allowed to have weapons. And so many of the police were running as well. Some of them acted as heroes with their bare hands, were severely wounded because they did not have the equipment and the training that they needed to address this fault. And of course, we have the opposite problem here in America. We have police who are trained to shoot first and not try to defuse the situation. Can we not find a happy middle ground? Can we not train people to not use excessive force, but give them the tools to use appropriate force when we have something like this? But the real key is that you are the first responder. This went on for 8 minutes. And as Sheriff Clark has said many times, we can't always be there. You have to defend yourself until we get there. We'll do what we can as the police, but you have to be able to defend yourself. That's why we have the Second Amendment in this country. It's very important that we have the Second Amendment, the real tools to control the jihadis that are coming in, even if we can't get them out. We still have a right to protect ourselves. That's a fundamental individual right, a God-given right. The Second Amendment does not grant that right. Government can't take that away. The Second Amendment is there to make sure that government does not take it away. And yet they do take away our Fourth Amendment, our Fifth Amendment, our Sixth Amendment, so many of our rights. And we have Theresa May in the UK trying to take away freedom of speech, saying that the internet is a breeding ground for terrorism. Let's take a look at what's happening in America. In America, we have a new record. This is a report from Washington Examiner via the Drudge Report. A new record. America arms itself, taking necessary steps to defend ourselves. The spurt in terror attacks are pushing gun sales into record territory just months after predictions that the election of a pro-gun president would end the rush. Remember? We'd all heard that Barack Obama was the greatest gun salesman of all time, and he was. Everybody was rushing to get guns before he tried to make it illegal or make ammunition illegal. But as they were concerned that this would all stop because we had a pro-Second Amendment, pro-self-defense president and Donald Trump. The FBI has reported that the number of gun sale background checks for May was the highest ever for May. Nearly 2 million, a trend that will make 2017 the first or second highest year for gun sales. They say this is in stark contrast to what some in the media and industry feared, that the election of President Trump would snuff out sales that in 2016 were driven by concerns that Hillary Clinton would be far worse than even Barack Obama, that she would implement strict gun control, that she would have an assault weapons ban. And yes, she would have. If Hillary Clinton was president, and this is one thing that we need to think about as we look at the Trump presidency, we would be fighting for our lives, quite literally, because she would be doing everything to take away our right of self-defense here in America as she brought in more and more jihadi terrorists. And now we're working in the other direction, hopefully. Now, as we talked about this, and I tweeted this out, this was the issue. I talked about how even the UK, they don't trust even their police to have weapons. Their trained, uniformed people are not even allowed to have weapons, let alone their individual citizens who really need to be able to protect themselves before the police can get there. You are the first responder. You have to understand that, of course. And so I had people coming back and complaining to me and saying, oh, look at all the gun deaths that have happened in the United States. Well, that may be, we all play games with statistics, don't we? Especially the left. They say, well, gun deaths, it could be anybody that was killed by a gun. It could be a suicide. It could be somebody who was a jihadi, for example, who was killed before they killed more people. That would be a gun death. You know, we shot this guy who was committing armed robbery, or you shot this guy who was trying to kill you, or who was raping a woman and coming after you, or whatever. Those self-defense shootings or those justified killings by the police, those are all counted along with gun deaths. It's not all accidental deaths or innocent people being killed. And so I said, you know, there were 3 people who deserved to die on the London Bridge attacks, and they were all killed by guns, weren't they? They were all killed by guns. But there were 7 people who did not deserve to die. They were killed by cars. They were killed by knives. And of course, we're going to have the government trying to take our cars away from us. I'm sure that they will use this as justification for car control, just as they have used this for justification for gun control. But they will not control our borders. They will not allow us to vet the terrorists who are coming into this country. And I just want to remind those who like to look at these gun totals, the number of gun deaths, and do it indiscriminately, as I said before, all accidental deaths, all suicidal deaths, all deaths of people who deserved to be killed because they were threatening the lives of other people at the time. They were killed in self-defense. Remember this from just a couple of weeks ago, this story, and this one was picked up on multiple outlets. Here's Zero Hedge's report of John R. Lott, the Crime Prevention Research Center. They point out that 51% of murders in the U.S. come from just 2% of the counties. Guess what the gun control laws are in that 2%? They have very stringent gun control laws. It's in the areas where they have gun freedom that they have the least amount of deaths. They pointed out that 54% of the countries with 11% of the population have no murders. 69% of the counties have no more than 1 murder, and about 20% of the population. They point out that the worst 1% of the counties in the United States have 19% of the population and 37% of the murders. The worst 5% of the counties contain 47% of the population, and they account for 68% of the murders. They say, to put it differently, only the top 4% of the counties have 16 or more murders. So our gun violence is concentrated into areas where there's strict gun control. And we also understand that most of these murders, even a lot of the innocent people who were shot, is because of gang violence. And that is directly tied to our unconstitutional war on drugs. It's not a problem with people who had weapons to protect themselves.
I want to tell you about some of the products at InfoWarsStore.com. We are under constant attack. You know it by now from the mainstream media. They're trying to attack us on every level. Now with the YouTube scandal, they're demonetizing our channels, which again takes a huge chunk out of our income, which is why we always appreciate and rely on you getting the products, because that's how we stay afloat. They can't get to us that way. They can't pressure you to not buy the products. They don't have that power. And that's why you're the key to this entire operation. We have Super Blue fluoride-free toothpaste, bubblegum flavor, just arrived at InfoWarsStore.com. This is by listener request. Bubblegum flavored Super Blue toothpaste now available at InfoWarsStore.com in limited supply. Again, if you're not using fluoride-free toothpaste by now, you're absolutely insane. Harvard studies, it reduces IQ, it causes bone cancer. It's not great, let's just put it that way. And I've been using it for about, 15 years now? So you're going to buy it anyway, why not buy it from us? It's in limited supply, but it is available at InfoWarsStore.com with the new bubblegum flavor, Super Blue fluoride-free toothpaste, and it supports this network, which is under constant demonization and attack, because we don't take big fat checks from George Soros. We don't get put on extremist lists even though they want us to. That's how they're taking away the YouTube money. That's why we need your support more than ever, because we're not funded by giant corporations who are now pulling the plug on YouTube as they move it into a TV thing, a Netflix model, to drown out independent voices. So support us by getting the products at InfoWarsStore.com.